Welcome to the Vintage Hollywood Archive. Rita Hayworth, American actress, dancer, and producer, achieved fame during the 1940s as one of the era's top stars, appearing in 61 films over 37 years. A beautiful actress, a gifted dancer, a fiery screen temptress, linked to some of the most handsome men of her generation. However, while Rita lit up the screen with her sensual beauty and trademark red hair, she paid a high price to get there. Why Rita Hayworth hated being a movie star. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Rita Hayworth, the Love Goddess. Rita Hayworth's tragic quest. Movie star Rita Hayworth, the Love Goddess, was a favorite pinup of GIs during World War II. Actor, producer, and genius Orson Welles and wealthy playboy Prince Ali Khan were two of her 5 husbands. The most famous image of Rita Hayworth, erotic icon of the 1940s, is a pinup photograph in which she is kneeling on a rumpled bed, wearing a dark satin and lace nightgown. Her head is turned over her shoulder, and she is facing the camera directly. Seeming to offer her body, Hayworth also appears to be keeping her real self in mysterious reserve. The life story of Rita Hayworth is a tragedy of epic proportions. Beauty, talent, fame, intelligence, she had it all. And yet, she remained unhappy and unloved until the day she passed. The men in her life often used and damaged her, and ultimately, her failed relationships broke her spirit. Hayworth danced and sang her way. No one ever said she acted through scores of successful Hollywood films, flashing her long legs and long, red, dyed hair in a manner that captivated her audiences. From the 1940s to the 1970s, she was on top, but her screen career ended with her flight from London in 1972, when she was unable to complete a movie being filmed there. She was 54 years old, and the gossip was that she was a victim of alcoholism and sexual debauchery. A decade later, there was a different diagnosis: the story of her unsuccessful battle with Alzheimer's disease. The ultimate cause of her death was told by her daughter, Yasmin Khan, with only silence and distance from Hayworth's elder daughter, Rebecca Wells. The public was shocked to learn of Hayworth's destructive disease. Rita's childhood was not a happy one. Her mother, Volga Hayworth, was part of the Ziegfeld Follies. Her father, Eduardo Cancino, was a Spanish dancer who emigrated to New York in 1913, where Rita was born 5 years later. Eduardo moved his family to Los Angeles, as he hoped Hollywood would bring them fame and fortune. He opened a dancing studio and taught stars how to shake a leg. When most kids were leading a carefree existence and spending their days playing and exploring, Rita Hayworth had a strictly regimented life, revolving around strenuous dance lessons. Her mother wanted her to become an actor, but her father only had one dream: to see her as a professional dancer. His wish prevailed, and she started dancing as soon as she could stand on her own feet. Rita remembered, "I didn't like dancing very much, but I didn't have the courage to tell my father. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. That was my girlhood." But unfortunately, she didn't have much choice in the matter. Her father's failing fortunes, he lost his money during the Depression, meant his hopes were pinned on Rita and her natural dance talent. By now, Rita was 12 but looked older. Her father took her out of school, dressed her in sexy clothes, added scarlet lipstick, and made her his dance partner. They toured seedy casinos and nightclubs in Mexico, where child labor laws were less strict. Margarita Carmen Cancino grew up with a sickening, isolating secret. Her father was sexually abusing her. Her mother, probably the only other person who knew about it, slept in a bed with the child in a vain attempt at protection. Probably her father's abusive treatment was the key to her emotional development and led to a lifetime of disastrous relationships. Eduardo made out that his daughter was his wife. He also overstepped that boundary when he wasn't on the dance floor. Hayworth's principal from school recalled her as being one of the kindest, most motherly girls she'd ever known. In spite of this, the poor thing never got to make any friends. She didn't even play with her younger brothers or the other kids on her street. Instead, little Rita would just sit on the steps of her home and watch the other kids have fun until it was time for her to dance again. The hard work did pay off. Rita Hayworth was part of a Broadway production before she even turned 5. Warner Brothers noticed her and cast her in a short film, La Fiesta, when she turned 8. Rita Hayworth never graduated from high school, and I'm sure you can guess why. Eduardo Cancino was an out-and-out villain, and he treated his daughter horrendously. His addiction to the bottle and gambling meant he spent whatever he earned from dancing. He made Rita catch fish for their dinner. Every time Margarita returned home, her mother tried to protect her, but Volga was penniless, powerless, and slipping into chronic alcoholism. A picture of young Margarita at this time shows a roly-poly girl staring into space, too shy to join with other children. Like most victims of incest, she had learned to disassociate, distance herself psychologically, and go to another world. Many years later, she explained that she would retreat into an imaginary carousel ride. If I don't like where I am, if I don't like me, I hear the music. I'm on a horse. I'm on the carousel. Their dancing tours weren't proving too profitable, so Eduardo looked for other ways to monetize his child. Margarita worked as an extra in Mexican films and was finally cast in a 1935 Fox film, Dante's Inferno, starring Spencer Tracy. The acutely withdrawn girl stepped outside her shy self, danced a sensuous dance, and inspired a press release describing her as a beautiful 16-year-old Spanish-Irish dancer who has circled the globe a dozen times. Rita was talent spotted by a Fox film producer. Photos of Rita Cancino show a raven-haired, slightly plump Latin American dancer. She had small parts in a string of films, and that might have been the summit of her career. But another man was about to change all that. A 41-year-old lounge lizard and car dealer called Edward Judson. Rita admitted later, "I could never have made the grade in Hollywood without him. I was just too backward. My whole career was his idea." Aged just 18, she embarked on her first, marrying her manager Edward Judson. He saw she could have all-American appeal and changed her name. Hayworth was her mother's maiden name. Judson was certainly an efficient hustler who got her press coverage and notice, but he was also as unscrupulous as her father. As Rita remembered, "I married him for love. He married me for an investment. From the first, he told me I couldn't do anything for myself. My personality crawled deeper and deeper into a shell." Judson saw Rita as an investment and married her to control her money. He pushed Eduardo out of the picture, along with any traces of her ethnicity. Electrolysis removed her widow's peak, and her black hair was dyed red. He put her on a diet, the better to squeeze into tight, rented gowns for publicity shots at the Trocadero. In addition to playing Pygmalion to his wife, Judson played pimp, offering her up to various producers. In the end, he was successful. Rita got a 7-year contract with Columbia. Judson ordered her to sleep with men who could help her career. One of these was the head of Columbia Pictures, the ruthless Harry Cohn, who expected sex from his female stars as part of the deal. She was harassed by Harry Cohn for decades. The Columbia Pictures founder relentlessly demanded that the actress sleep with him, bugged her dressing rooms, and imposed financial penalties for insubordination. When it came to women, Harry Cohn was something of a Jekyll and Hyde, but mostly Hyde. On the other hand, he could be their champion. He appointed screenwriter Virginia Van Up as an executive producer at the studio in 1946, the first woman with that title. And no one had to fend off more unwanted advances than Rita Hayworth. Cohn discovered Rita Hayworth in 1936 and groomed her for Hollywood. By the mid-40s, Hayworth was a major star, appearing in Technicolor musicals like 1944's CoverGirl and sultry film noirs like 1946's Gilda, while fueling GI fantasies overseas as a pin-up girl. In front of people, Harry Cohn would say, "I never put a hand on her," Hayworth told the New York Times in 1970. Of course, he hadn't put a hand on me, as if I'd let him. But even though she had become the mistress of Howard Hughes, Rita courageously drew the line at Cohn. He was too shrewd a film mogul not to see her potential. Between them, Cohn and Judson completed the transformation from Latina dancer to America's love goddess. Cohn, obsessed with Rita, attempted to control her, forcing her to punch a time clock even when she was his biggest star. In a rare show of empowerment, Rita refused her husband and refused to bed Harry Cohn. Judson, feeling his grip slipping, threatened her with, among other imaginative forms of disfigurement, throwing lye in her face. Hayworth portrayed several minor characters for Columbia over the next 3 years, from 1937 to 1940. By 1941, Rita's life was a nightmare, menaced by her husband at home and stalked by her boss at work. But, using the technique developed as a child, she detached. She was able to check out of the misery of her life, light up the screen, and make an entire country fall in love with her. She got a small but important role opposite stars like Cary Grant and Jean Fisher in Only Angels Have Wings, and with her big break just around the corner, she finally started to get noticed. After a cover story in Life magazine, Hayworth was officially an it girl. No longer Hispanic or Irish, she was now an all-American girl, and after starring with Gene Kelly in CoverGirl, it seemed Technicolor was invented just for her. Soon enough, Rita Hayworth was an A-list actress. She appeared in hit films and was especially successful in musicals. After years of hard work, she finally got to play lead roles in musicals opposite Fred Astaire. With such divine dancers, it was no surprise that the films were hugely successful. Astaire later claimed she was his favorite dancing partner, saying, "Nothing is too difficult for her. She watches, goes home, practices up, and the next day she's got it perfect." After turning over all her assets to Judson, she was able to divorce him in 1942, but was left so broke she asked her friend Hermes Pan if she could eat at his home. Hayworth's career was finally taking off, but her personal life was as atrocious as ever. The public fetishized her as a goddess or raging siren, but it was a manufactured, one-dimensional image. In reality, she was pathologically shy, passive, and needy, and would always remain that way. As an actress, Hayworth is best remembered as Gilda, which cast her opposite Glenn Ford in the film, peeling off long black gloves in a self-absorbed striptease. A favorite of film noir fans, the film was chock full of sexual innuendo. In 1942, Hayworth met the man she would call the great love of my life. Wunderkind director Orson Welles had been shooting in Brazil when he came across Hayworth's iconic pin-up spread in the August 11 edition of Life magazine. "I saw that fabulous still in Life magazine, where she's on her knees in bed, and that's when I decided, when I come back, that's what I'm going to do." Once back in Hollywood, Welles found that the real Hayworth was miles away from her femme fatale love goddess image. "The whole wicked Gilda figure was absolutely false. It was a total impersonation, like Lon Chaney or something," he said. To draw the sweet, timid Hayworth out, Wells would pretend to read her mind, so she had to correct him. Hayworth relished having fun with Wells' friends from the Mercury Theater, as she was finally able to connect with people her own age. The exuberant couple married on September 7, 1943 in Santa Monica, during Hayworth's lunch break from shooting the film Covergirl, with Joseph Cotton serving as best man. The newlyweds settled in a Brentwood mansion, where Wells built a roofless solarium so Hayworth could sunbathe. Together they plotted their escapes from Hollywood, attempting to launch Wells' political career, which was urged on by none other than President Roosevelt. "She hated being a movie star," Wells lamented. "She never got a moment's pleasure out of being a famous movie star. It gave her nothing." Hayworth worked hard to please the brilliant Wells, reading the books he read and supporting the progressive causes he supported. "I really wanted to be everything Orson wanted of me." But the self-destructive, egocentric Wells soon began to leave Hayworth, then pregnant with their daughter Rebecca, to canoodle with heiress Gloria Vanderbilt in a quarter at 21 in New York City. "Something happened when our eyes met," Gloria Vanderbilt, who was there with her own husband at the time, later recalled. "Under the table he kept touching my knee, and soon we were holding hands." Wells began to frequent sex workers and launched into a passionate affair with Judy Garland. He also became increasingly disturbed by Hayworth's neediness, drinking, and explosive temper. It was Hayworth who would file for divorce. Hayworth flew into a rage after discovering that her picture had been affixed to the nuclear test bomb, named Gilda, detonated at Bikini Atoll. Rita almost went insane. She was so angry, she was so shocked by it. She wanted to go to Washington and to hold a press conference, but Harry Cohn wouldn't let her because it would be unpatriotic. Although he was married, Prince Ali Khan soon convinced famous hostess Elsa Maxwell to introduce him to Hayworth. He pursued the reluctant star across the French Riviera, filling her suites with flowers and buzzing her hotels in his private plane. Eventually, Hayworth was persuaded. But the sociable and womanizing prince, before he was officially divorced from Hayworth, he would woo Joan Fontaine, Yvonne DiCarlo, and Jean Tierney, had not changed at all. Hayworth was soon his arm candy at an exhausting round of society events. A disastrous marriage to big band singer Dick Haymes, whose Hollywood nickname was Mr. Evil, led to a brutal custody battle with the prince, lawsuits with Columbia, and temporarily losing custody of her daughters to the state. At the age of 42, Alzheimer's disease began to ravage her mind, cutting short her career at its peak. A haunting and sympathetic tribute to the talented but insecure beauty who was created and ultimately destroyed by the movies. Poor Hayworth. It seems like she was always surrounded by evil men. Judson pushed her father Eduardo out of the picture, but the swap changed almost nothing. Like her father, Judson was determined to make Rita into his personal meal ticket. A complicated mix of ethnicity and transformation helped make Hayworth a high-value star in the Hollywood studio system. Although her personal life was laced with tragedy, she successfully walked a line in her career. Rita Hayworth seemed to live the life that dreams are made of, but the reality behind the fantasy was a harsh one. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new here.